Ladies and gentlemen, in this RedGamingTed.com video, we're going to be talking yet more on the saga of Always On Xbox 720. You may remember just yesterday I produced a video that was going into further details on the rumours that have been circulating for a while now on Xbox 720 requiring an internet connection, and Always On internet connection, may I add. So the details were quite simply that if your internet connection dropped for over the period of 3 minutes, so for example 3 minutes and 5 seconds, then your console would lose the ability to play games and you would be prompted to basically run the internet connection wizard, or the troubleshooter, shall I say. And that wasn't that well received. However, there has been further developments. Adam Orff, who is a creative director at Microsoft, made a series of tweets yesterday. Now I'm going to read the first one in a quote. "Sorry, I don't get the drama around having an always-on console. Every device now is always on. That's the world we live in," and then with the hashtag, deal with it. Now these were made, once again, on his personal Twitter accounts. Now that alone probably pissed off a few people, especially those who are against the idea of always-on DRM, which you can pretty much say this is, if you really want to boil it down. So that's bad enough. However, then a BioWare designer, Manheer Heir, and that's H-E-I-R, I'm hoping I pronounced that correctly, I'm terrible with the pronunciation of names, and that's a senior BioWare designer, may I add, decided to jump in, and he responded with, "Did you learn nothing from Diablo 3 or SimCity? You know some people's internet goes out, right? Deal with it is a," and I don't like to swear in videos, but still, "deal with it is a shitty reason." And Orff replied again, "Electricity goes out too." There was another reply which said, You've lived in LA, San Francisco, Seattle, very connected places. Try living in Janesville or Blacksburg, VA." And then Orff responded yet again, "Why on earth would I live there?" Now, in case you're unfamiliar with Adam, he is not a noob, if you forgive the term, on consoles. He's worked on some big ones. Star Wars Force Unleashed 2, oh dear. Sony, he's worked on God of War 3, 4, and with EA as well, and that would be various Medal of Honors. So, the project he's working on currently is unknown. It's under wraps. We don't know anything about it. So that suggests that it's going to be on the next Xbox 720, or should I say next Xbox. Now, Mr. Orff also concluded all of this by saying, and I quote, "Sometimes the electricity goes out, and I will not purchase a vacuum cleaner. The mobile reception in my area I live in is spotty and unreliable, and will not purchase a cell phone. These people should definitely get with the times and get internet. It's awesome." Now on Reddit, there's already an absolute massive crap storm of this because of various comments, including the offending people who live in non-city, and he's already apologized for this. But it just doesn't really seem to make sense, his comments. Now, some of the flack that he's been receiving, some of the criticisms on some of his comments, yes, it's somewhat unfair. I think that he didn't mean anything badly about the comment. You know, he's just not interested in living in the city or whatever. But the bottom line is the rest of it, Now, we've known for a while now that both Microsoft and Sony are not really happy with the state of second-hand or used games, or however you want to label them. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One, they don't get any extra profits for those games. And two, it reduces the sales figures for those games. In other words, let's say, for example, that you were to sell your copy to your friend Tom. Well, that game has effectively been paid by two people. However, only one copy has been sold. And this, of course, is exactly the same if you happen to trade it in or sell it on eBay or whatever the heck you do with it, even if you give it to charity. It's the same basic principle. And so, obviously, there are numerous reasons why Microsoft and Sony are not happy about this. Now, these comments from Microsoft, you can argue that that still doesn't mean or preclude or demonstrate that, yes, this console is always online. However, it sounds like he's trying to put the feelers out there at the very least, or defending something he's working on. At least to me. I mean, why would you make those comments if you're not working on something that requires it? It just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to defend or jump on a topic that, in reality, in say 6 months' time, when the console's been announced and everyone's getting ready to buy the thing, it will be a non-issue because it's not there. So why would anyone care, right? It doesn't make sense to, worry about something that doesn't exist. On the other hand, it doesn't really seem that this is the case. It seems that he's at least defending a certain position. And people who are against the idea of an always-on system come across from a few perspectives, and I think you can guess most of them. One of the perspective, as Manheer said, who of course once again is a senior BioWare designer, what about if you live in an area that just has crummy internet? It's just that simple. Some areas just have lousy internet, whether you're in the States, whether you're in Canada, whether you're in Japan, or even in the UK. Even though we're a pretty small country, there are some areas that just have quite simply crap internet. And once again, even if you live in the city, even if you are like me, who live in a pretty big town/city, and you normally have very good internet, it's not infallible. Sometimes it goes down, your router can break, whatever. Second thing, what about if you take it around your friend's house? You've then got to configure it, and once again, if it's a game that you don't really give a crap about playing online with others, for example, a fighting game or a racing game or I don't know, that type of title, it just doesn't really make sense to set up all the internet connection. It's just that little bit of extra stress and that little bit of extra unrequired setup time if you're around a friend's house and you're getting ready to party. The other issue, of course, is a more fundamental one, and that is if it does indeed block used games. Well, console games are expensive to some people. Now, I can somewhat sympathise with the plight of developers, and their plight is simple. Games cost quite a lot of cash, and they do not get your cash to, if you buy the game secondhand. It's just that simple. They don't get any of your cash, and the games cost a lot of money to develop, so they need some reward. The problem is, from the perspective of many, that games are also very expensive. And even if you don't buy used, even if you have no interest in it, some people just want to borrow them. They just want to borrow a game from a friend. Or what about something simple? Like, for example, let's say your friend is using let's say, for example, your friend has the new whatever game, it doesn't matter what, and let's say that game's multiplayer and they want to bring it around your house to try it out. Well, they can't. Right? Unless, of course, it's accounts and so on. So, in other words, you have to sign in with your account around your friend's house. You can't just use a guest account, so that's yet more time, more stress. And quite honestly speaking, it becomes just that much more hassle and that much more stress to be able to just get on your living room. Now, I can understand that, yes, most people now have an internet connection. And yes, I understand that most people's internet connection is at least to the point where it's stable enough to be able to play games, and that's cool, and I understand that, but internet connections are not infallible. No network is infallible, and for example, Xbox Live has gone down several times. PSN, that's all I have to say on that, really. It's just that simple, especially as now hacking seems to become more and more and more of a thing. There's more hacking attempts of big networks than ever. Plus, you've got the issues of if you want to take your game around a friend's house, that's just a pain in the butt. Okay, once again, you maybe will be able to sign in with your own account and so on. But honestly, it's just that much more work. It's getting to the point now where you just want to play the game, but you've got to jump through hoops. Now, that's not to say that Sony aren't going to do something against used games as well, maybe in the future. And that's certainly not to say that PCs don't have similar issues. On PCs, you obviously cannot really sell used games, especially if they're on Steam. There are some instances that you can trade games if you have, say, bought 2 copies, say, for example, in bundles, that type of thing. Generally speaking, you can't. For example, when I bought the THQ bundle back in the day, I had 2 copies of, I can't even remember which game, it doesn't really matter, but I was just SOL. I couldn't really do anything with that. That's just my tough luck. And the same thing goes for other games as well. Say, for example, if you got one game for free, there, say, for example, game 2 comes out after the prequel, and you buy the sequel and the prequel comes with it, you can't really do anything. You can't often gift that to other people. Sometimes you can, sometimes you cannot. Regardless, for example, I'm looking at my games list, and right there, I say, for example, Quake 4. Let's say I don't want Quake 4 anymore. I can't give that away, is what it comes down to. It's just tough. There are exceptions to this, of course, especially indie, but on big titles, that's just your tough luck. It's tied to your account. Unless you're willing to set up an account for every one of your games, it's just not feasible. It's just not going to happen. And of course, by no means is that the only examples. Obviously, you have other ones, such as, say, World of Warcraft and so on. But I would argue that there is some reason that I don't mind it as much. And that is, generally speaking, the games are significantly cheaper. And I know I've used this example so many times you guys are probably going to cry, but BioShock Infinite cost me £23, and I got BioShock Infinite, I got the original BioShock, even though it's not really that much use to me, but still, I got The Darkness 2, and I believe even XCOM Enemy Unknown, all for 23. In other words, it's part of a bundle. By no means is that the only example of this. I got Resident Evil 6 for ridiculously cheap. I think it was around £15 or £16. And that's not even including things like Steam sales. Now, obviously, console games, that doesn't happen, especially on a console's, first year or two. The games are usually expensive. In the UK, for example, they are like £40 to £45, which, is quite a bit of cash. And honestly, as well, another issue with all of this is that quite a few people, if they are in the same house, say 2 brothers growing up, or brother and sister, or what have you, or 2 friends flat sharing, whatever, they have 2 of the same systems. So, for example, I had friends who were growing up, and they were brothers, and they would both usually buy the same system times 2. And there was a simple reason for that. One of them wants to play game A, one of them wants to play game B. However, sometimes they would want to play the same game, or one would want to play, the other person's game, and it was just a pain in the butt to really have to keep worrying about swapping, Imagine, for example, if you couldn't really easily swap and you had to worry about accounts and so on the same system. It's just that much more difficult. I'm really against this whole idea of blocking games in that respect. Maybe, for example, if the game can run on, say, 2 systems. But then, of course, that doesn't really make sense, because if you were to do that, then obviously the issue is that you could just sell the game once. And you can't even do it via IP address. Why can't you do it via IP address? Well, imagine your IP address is A, just for example. And let's say you were to change your IP address, because some IP addresses are, of course, dynamic. Others are you could move to a different location, or you could move to a different IP address, or my IP changed, for example, when I upgraded my internet connection, because obviously they put me on different tariffs and so on, so therefore my internet connection IP address changed, therefore it wouldn't work in that instance either. Don't get me wrong, I kinda like some aspects of this in terms of the games are running from the hard drive, which of course are the rumours right now with the Xbox 720. If that's true, and the games that do install to the hard drive, that's closer to PCs. And in my opinion, that's a good thing, because it cuts down on loading times. Okay, Blu-ray drives, it's going to go up to 6 speed apparently on both the PS4 and Xbox 720. But honestly speaking, even at times, 6 is not going to be the speed of a hard disk. It's just that simple. I don't really think that that's news to anyone. So that's good. I just don't really like the idea of what's happening right now in terms of this connection. Now, once again, none of this has been confirmed by Microsoft. That is very important to remember. But these tweets and, of course, a lot of leaked documents certainly wouldn't preclude it being true. It certainly wouldn't mean that it definitely is true, but it certainly doesn't mean that it isn't true. And often a lot of these rumors that have been leaked with these consoles have been fairly close. I mean, it's not like they've been exactly bang on. The PS4 specs, as I was saying yesterday, PS4 specs were a little bit out, mostly in terms of the amount of RAM. They were slightly out. But honestly speaking, most of them were fairly accurate, honestly. So yeah, it's a really, I wouldn't say bizarre decision, because as I've said, it's not like there isn't cause and reason for Microsoft to want to stamp out used games, and I'm sure Sony feels the same way as well. But obviously Sony are not doing the whole always online system. I honestly think as well that if this is true, and obviously that's a big if, that it's going to require a lot for people to swallow this quite happily. In other words, there's going to have to be some very bloody good benefits for this. And okay, Microsoft are quite happy to say that we can download your games, updates, and everything else silently, and that's all great. You know what? That's nice. But so could the Wii. Honestly, that could update and do updates without any problems, and that didn't require an always-on connection. And obviously, Microsoft are always about the online experience, and everyone's playing against friends. But honestly speaking, there are some people who are just not that interested in playing online often. That's not to say that they never play online, or they don't have times where they want to play online, or games they play online with. For example, I occasionally play Black Ops 2 online, or what have you. But most of the time, I just choose not to. I went through a massive period where I was playing online games almost consistently. Counter-Strike, World of Warcraft, goodness knows what else. But now I'm just in a period where I just don't really want to. I'm more into the story and the tech and that type of thing, as you guys may be aware. So yeah, it's certainly going to be very interesting how Microsoft handle this, if it is true. And if it's not, well, that'll be very good in my personal opinion. But anyway, I think that's just about enough on this particular topic until there's a bit more. So hopefully you've enjoyed the video, and I will see you soon. Take care and bye for now.